On this podcast, we're speaking with Paul Henderson. Early on, Paul learned the value of hard work, spending seasons tree planting in northern British Columbia before eventually shifting into journalism, where he's made a deliberate commitment to independence, integrity, and following stories wherever they lead, even when the path isn't easy. Paul is now an independent journalist, with his writings found on his website, pauljhenderson.com, and he's about to step into the audio space with a new podcast called Something Worth Hearing. And without further ado, let's welcome Paul Henderson to the OverArch podcast.
You are listening to OverArch.
Today we're talking to Paul Henderson. Thanks, Paul, for coming. Appreciate your time here. So a little bit about the podcast, if you're not aware. We did a bit of background research, or I did, not we, about what you do for a living in your career. So this is really just a discussion about your journey, where you are today, and kind of how you got here. So we're going to go way back to when you're a child and et cetera. But can you just sort of give me the summary of what are you up to today? What is the career you're currently having, or what is your title?
Full-time unemployed? No, I am a journalist. I guess you could say an investigative journalist, but it's more just straight journalism. But I'm doing what I've done for 20 years, which is reporting on the important things that are happening around us. I have a particular focus on the courts, criminal justice, crime, all kinds of legal matters, and I've always done that. That's always been part of my role as a reporter when I worked for the newspapers. But I really like it, and it's actually, I like it, and people want to read it. I have learned. I just know that from analytics alone. It's very important, and it's very important stuff. People are very interested by it, and so I cover the courts, and I write about all kinds of things, anything you can imagine.
So as an independent investigative journalist, how are you kind of reaching your audience? Like what does that look like right now? And how are people finding out your stories and whatnot?
Yeah, well, I have a website, and it's the URL is just my name, pauljhenderson.com. But the name of my site, name of my independent news site, is Something Worth Reading. And that's at first that sounds somewhat arrogant, actually. Like, yeah, it's worth reading, really, It's aspirational. Let's put it that way. Like I want to be writing things that are worth reading.
But that name has some significance because it comes from something. So explain that a little bit.
It does. Yeah, it does. It comes from a quote that I came across a couple of years ago that I thought was just like words to live by sort of thing. And it's the quote is either write something worth reading or do something worth writing about.
Love it.
And so it's kind of as a writer and as someone who wants to try and live my life a little more fully and intentionally, it's sort of a great way to do. So I'm either writing things that I hope people want to read, or I'm not just sitting around watching TV. I'm doing other things, and I actually have a tattooed on my forearm.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, well, it means something to you. Well, I'm glad you're writing about it and not doing it, because you're an investigative. A lot of the crimes that you've been investigating here locally in Fraser Valley and Chilliwack particularly. Do you want to just talk a little bit about what you kind of have a focus, but you have an angle with the law, but what are the sort of top crimes you've been sort of looking into here?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I do, I'll say two things about that. One is that I cover crime in the courts differently than really anybody else in the mainstream media. And that's not to be like cocky or anything. And it's actually too bad, but I'm the only one doing it.
Yeah.
As someone who wants to be read and seen and maybe important, I guess that's a good thing. But it's actually quite often I'll do a story that's so important, that's so should be covered, and I'm the only one writing it. The local paper isn't doing it. The broadcast outlets don't come out here, so I'm the only one doing a lot of those things. And one of the things I focused on over the years is obviously homicides are the most sort of serious of the most, the worst thing one person can do to another, I like to say. And I've ever since I was working for the newspaper, I kept track of certain homicides in the year, and I would write them down And then I kept writing them down every year, and then I looked back to 2006, and then I made a list, and then
So just out of curiosity, that's like, I mean, obviously you're passionate about it now as an independent journalist, especially in today's world. Like, I commend people who go out on their own and have purpose. So to me, so you were just starting to sort of jot down some crimes happening, not necessarily investigating yet, but you're just jotting them down. Okay. So keep going. Yeah.
Well, because 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 homicides are not actually that common in Canada in terms of per 100,000 statistically. When one happens, even in a city the size of 100,000 people, it's big news. And so I would cover it for the newspaper. I'd write a story about what happened. This happened. This person was found. This person's been charged, and then maybe I'd follow it through the courts or it's unsolved. So, but looking back, then it was quite easy to remember. Oh yeah, there was 3 this year. There was 2 this year. There was 6. So I just kept track of all these homicides to the point where I thought, it'd be interesting to literally map out all these homicides.
Yeah.
Which is what I did. I went to City Hall and bought a $10 map from the development department. It's very large. I think it's 4 foot by 6 foot. And it's a very macabre habit, I guess, or hobby, but I mapped out where every homicide occurred in the last 20 years in Chilliwack. And, I put the strings, I got the photo of every victim, 3 or 4 of the victims I couldn't find. And I just mapped it all out. I literally didn't know what I was going to do with it when I made it.
Okay. So just out of your own curiosity and sort of, okay, fascinating.
I knew there would be something.
What do you think triggered that? What do you think said, I'm going to do, like, can you even recall looking at that?
Mental illness.
Okay, fair. Well, you're using it for good,
yes,
so that's good.
No, it's I'm just fascinated by it, and quite often, not every homicide is the same. In fact, they're all very different. But so they're just very interesting stories. They're like, obviously they're heart-wrenching and terrible, and but there's gang murders, there's domestic violence, there's just very tragic, almost accidental killings. But I thought it'd be worth tracking them, and then also tracking, of course, what the outcomes were. Who the accused was, who the offender was, if they went to trial, if they went to jail, all those things. But then, of course, keeping track of the ones that were not solved, and looking at those and looking at them more closely. I'm not so arrogant as to think I'm going to solve any murders.
Okay.
But I know for a fact that police like it, actually, when you talk about cold cases, because every single unsolved homicide, somebody knows something. Quite often the case is a lot of people know something, but they're too scared to come forward, especially if it's a gang hit. They're not reliable witnesses. I always say that I kind of joke based on all my sources in the community that, well, it's not funny, but I
understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
I know who murdered about 6 unsolved homicides in Chilliwack, but I don't, of course, know that. But I have pretty reliable sources who've said it. I have sources who are, inside the criminal justice system, but I also have sources who are formerly in the world, so to speak.
Yeah, I see.
I've got one person in particular, and you get a lot of tips and a lot of advice and questions asked by members of the public, and if it's repeated, you start realizing this person is loopy, and I'm going to not listen to them anymore. But there's some people. There's one guy in particular.
Yeah.
Everything he's ever told me has turned out to be accurate, and he's told me stuff that's just like,
wow,
blew my mind.
So there are people out there that know stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and he always says, you can't tell anyone that I told you this.
Of course not.
Because they'll kill me.
Yeah.
So he's someone who was in that world, he says, isn't anymore.
Yeah.
He's clearly tangentially still in it.
Yeah.
And he knows, he's told me exactly, like on my homicide map, I can tell you this victim actually killed that person, that unsolved homicide.
Yeah.
And then that guy was killed because of, so these people tell me these things, and it's interesting details and they're fascinating, but no one's ever going to get charged in some of those crimes.
Because then you have to prove it.
Yeah, they have to prove it, or even if
In a court.
a witness is even a first-hand witness or even a second-hand witness is great for the police, but none of those people want to talk to the police.
Yeah. So it's kind of as you sort of started charting this independent journalism, people, I guess word of mouth, people see you and realize, hey, I'm going to reach out to that because, you know, in your career path, you did mention you did work for a paper at one point, but now this is your complete independent journey you're on. So maybe I want to revisit this again, but let's go back to you definitely, for someone to just start mapping out crimes that are happening in Chilliwack, and I mean this in a great way. There's probably some character traits as a young person that maybe I don't know, you know, you're generally a curious individual, but you want to find answers too. You want to really get under something. So when you were say, I mean, with this, the theme of the podcast is, you know, we're going to look at your career journey. You've got an interesting story because what you're doing now has a whole other angle to it, which is a podcast you're doing called Something Worth Hearing. So I'm aware of that, but we'll talk more about that as well. Because your stories do have, you know, continuations, and then you're also taking them through the courts, which is really cool. But I'll let you talk about that in your podcast. So as a young person, like growing up, what sort of career choices did you have? What sort of odd jobs were you sort of doing as a young person? What were you curious in, like arts and sciences, or what was did you want to be a fireman when you're like, what was your earliest memories of thinking about your future?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like, looking back anecdotally, I didn't have a lot of images of the future, but I know there was a period of time I wanted to be maybe not an artist, but I liked to draw.
Okay.
And I remember at a certain age realizing there was such a career as a graphic artist and someone who, you know, almost doesn't exist anymore because it's so digital, and never mind AI and all that. But so I thought I wanted to maybe be a graphic artist, whatever that meant, or graphic designer, actually, at a quite young age. But I was never really strongly leaning towards anything else. I was always interested in the law. Again, I'm moving around in ages, but when I was a bit older, I thought of trying to go to law school. I think I was self-deprecating enough to think I wouldn't be smart enough, isn't the word, but the attention to detail, the focus you need to do medicine or law is staggering. And it was just too much for me.
Yeah, the amount of years you have to consider for that. So when you were young, let's say before you were, say maybe your high school years, what sort of jobs did you kind of do?
Well, and I've told you this before. I know you know this, that I was, and I don't mean to brag, and I'm signing autographs later if you want. Yeah. But I was a child model.
And that's kind of a cool, that's kind of neat. I know you'd have told me that before, but I find it fascinating because it's one of those jobs where as a kid, I mean, you're going to, but you're going to get some chunks of cash too as a young person, and you're going to have some work where, you know, normally it's McDonald's, it's paper routes, it's, you know, I pulled weeds for my grandma, I did odd jobs, you know, going to the dump. So that was kind of my career, pretty much. I did do forest firefighting in grade 12, which was pre like training and everything. It was just like grab a shovel and go. This was in Kamloops, but that's another story. But with being a model though, as what age were you for that again?
I was 8.
Okay. But you're not just modeling like Dick's Lumber. You were doing like, tell me about that.
Okay. So I grew up in Toronto. I guess what you would call the Greater Toronto Area. I grew up in Oakville, Ontario. A lot of people have heard of that. I just thought, member of the Canadian hockey team, female hockey team, was from Oakville. So, you know.
Oh, cool.
Ron McLean's from Oakville. Anyway, I grew up in Oakville, and my mother was an actress, not a professional actress. She was big in the community theater, what my family was. My father was a playwright, and my mother was always the star of all the plays. And I'll tell you about what I told my therapist about that if you want later. So she, you know, put me into modeling. And so why would somebody do such a thing?
And what age was this? This was,
I think I was 8. There's a chance I was 7. It was definitely not before 7. And I know that I the first things I were in were 1980, and I was born in late 71. So I would have been 8 years old. So yeah. So, and the reason that she put me into it, and this again is going to sound arrogant, but it's actually embarrassing. And maybe I'll show you a picture later to put on the podcast here, but I was objectively incredibly cute. I was
That's
adorable.
no shame. That's no shame.
I was adorable.
Yeah.
I had like just little pale, little freckled
Yeah.
face and bright orange, curly hair.
Yeah.
And, you know, my blue eyes and my little, anyway. So I was very cute. And for some reason, redheads are slightly less common.
Yeah.
But if you look back in the magazines in the late 70s, early 80s, redheads are overrepresented. I think there was some fetish going on.
Or maybe just like we need to represent, so they corrected maybe.
I am a minority. It's true.
So from that modeling career, obviously there's no ego there. I have seen the photos and I do contest. Yeah, they cast the right people for the spot. So that was younger. I mean, obviously with that, you've set the bar pretty high with your cash intake. I mean, you're kind of like, I think every job should get, I don't know, you don't need to go into numbers, but at the time you probably made some, these were also national spots.
Yeah, well, it was, so my main problem, and again, this is what takes into my psychology into account, but I was really very, very shy. So that's not something you want in a model. But I was also like so shy that I didn't really want to speak. And so a lot of TV ads I missed out on because I didn't want to speak. So I mostly did flat work. I did a couple TV commercials, I think 2, and where I didn't even say any words. But mostly I did flat work, so magazine ads. So they were in, Chatelaine magazine and Back of TV Guide and Canadian Living magazine. And make tons of money, but you make pretty good money, and you make TV ads are better. In fact, it's too bad I didn't do more.
Yeah.
Because you make residuals, they're called, which you probably know that.
Yeah.
That's where every time it's shown, you get whatever small amount of money. And interestingly, with modeling, I joined a union at 8 years old. So
Wow.
Because I had to, ACTRA. But also because I was under 18, all the money that was paid to me was not paid to me. It was, or my parents. Basically, so your parents can't steal it from you. It was put into a fund.
That's smart.
I think it was just a Canada savings bond.
Okay.
But something that my parents couldn't touch, because imagine, some parents would put their cute kid in and go, sweet, I'm breaking.
I've heard tons of stories, especially in the United States, with some of the child actors. They're supporting their families.
So I went to university. Yeah. When I went to university at 18, I suddenly got this like chunk of money, and I was like, what the heck is that? I remember thinking in hindsight, my parents were so smart to save that money for me. And I realized later that no, it wasn't my parents doing it. It was ACTRA. It was requirement of the industry.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's great.
That is amazing, especially for school. So, okay, so you didn't have the paper out, but you went right into. So at school, what were you? Were you aware of what you wanted to be when you were at school? Sort of at university, where you kind of go, I'm going to try this or that, or you spoke about you enjoyed law. Was that something still in your mind, or maybe just have a dabble in it, or what was your head at, and what were you feeling kind of now that you're at university?
Yeah, well, I was always a couple things. I was always a journalist. I kept a journal, and it actually started. My parents forced me to write a journal when we went on vacation, and for 12 years old, going to PEI, and I'm like, oh, we went on a boat today and caught a cod, and Dad cooked it at the campsite, and so I would always write things down that I did, and then it became an obsession, like almost an obsession. Any spare time I had as an adult, I would write. I used to write. I used to like sketchbooks.
Yeah.
With big hardcovers.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't like lined paper, so I just like blank. So I would just like write just over and over and over again, lines and lines and lines. So I was always journaling, writing. I never consciously really thought I knew, being a writer was like a career. I was never that interested in being a journalist. I don't know why, because I was interested in the news and I was interested in writing. But I just really didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was in university, I studied philosophy, which is kind of what you do when you don't know what you want to do. And I got a degree, an honors BA in philosophy. And then I went...
Well done. Well done.
Yeah. At the time, I wanted to become... I thought, when I was in, say, probably second year university, I thought, I want to become an academic. I want to do this, carry on and do a master's.
Yeah.
And as often happens with, I think, with people, with education, with age, I always like to say when I was in first year university, I knew everything. I would put my hand up and
Oh, wow.
talk about Nietzsche to the religion professor. By the time I was in fourth year university, I realized I knew nothing. So that's what comes with age and maturity, is
Yes.
realizing you're not as smart as you think you are.
No.
To the point where I was like, I can't do a master's. This is too much. I can't focus on this. So,
But it's interesting to hear you, like, as you're a younger person, you're journaling, and bravo to your parents too for making you do that. I think that's fantastic. So but I can see. Oh, look at what you do now, though. It makes perfect sense. So that's kind of a connection that I'm finding, or that I'm hoping to find with people, is like you kind of stumble upon your what you're doing today. If you're actively going out and doing something, and you're trying, and you're willing to fail, and willing to, oh, that didn't work out, but at least I tried it. But in the end, you kind of realize, oh, these are things that I've kind of always been sort of doing or enjoyed, right? So when you were so you got your philosophy degree, and congratulations on the master's, or the honors. What did you
just
say?
honor, yeah.
The honors, okay.
It's been 4 years, not a 3-year degree.
But I mean, it's a good time. It's time for
You need a certain
self-exploration.
Yeah.
After graduation, so you then became a journalist. No?
No.
What
No.
happened after graduation?
I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in Ontario. I went to Western in London, Ontario, and I, in between third year and fourth year, I went tree planting in Northern Ontario, and then after fourth year university, I tree planted again in Ontario, and then that fall, I'd always wanted to drive out to BC by myself for some reason.
So going from studying and learning to hard labor, how are the black flies?
Yeah.
I've heard about them.
Ontario
Yeah.
is idiotic.
Okay, I've heard about them.
In hindsight, I don't know how I did it, because I've seen, it's like anything with insects, is they affect some people more than others, and I don't know if they like some people's blood more than others. But I remember this one girl who went home after a couple of weeks, and she would like duct tape her shirt onto her, like that, and duct tape her clothing on, and then at the end of the day, pull the duct tape off, and there were hundreds of dead black flies because they crawl under the duct tape, bite her, and then die. And it was just horrific. She was just like
Poor girl.
literally eaten alive.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about this. Mosquitoes are very surgical. They inject into you. And they inject a substance in that thins your blood, because obviously your blood's too thick to go, and then they suck it out. It's very surgical, right?
Yeah.
A black fly has teeth and a tongue. A black fly lands on you and scratches with the teeth until blood comes up, and then just licks your blood.
I hate them.
Anyway, that's a rabbit hole.
Well, that's okay. No, it is a rabbit hole for sure.
But that was Ontario tree planting. And
Well, that's what I mean. Like that's a career move. Here we go. But you sort of stuck with it, though. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I did seasonal tree planting, more like a lot of tree planting everywhere else in Canada is May to August, and in most of northern BC it's May to August. In southern BC and the island, people tree plant from February to November, but because it's obviously possible, right? You can't crack the ground when it's frozen.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in Canada. So I came to BC in the fall, and I literally just hung around. I went up to Whistler. I thought maybe I'd be a lifty, a ski bum, and I tried some jobs. I was a bike courier in downtown Vancouver for 6 months, and then I started tree planting in BC and made a lot more money. Ontario was terrible.
So from Ontario, then when you came out to BC, you kind of did some more exploration there to figure some jobs out, but realized the bike carrier is interesting. That's quite of a.
It was. When you look back and you go, how the hell did I do that? But when you're in your 20s, you're 25, and you can literally do anything.
Yeah.
No matter, even if you're not, like I wasn't a big, strong, tough guy, but whatever, you can just do anything. I can't even believe I've planted 500,000 trees in my life. If I went to try and plant one bag up of trees now, I would probably have a heart attack.
Yeah, it's either ignorance and the body can recover quicker. I mean, at that age too, as a bike courier, I mean, you just feel like you're not like you're invincible, but now you kind of you're sort of like, I'll. And
I had you should see my legs. They were sexy. I looked like a speed skater.
Well, tree trunks probably, and then you're
totally.
Hence the tree planting.
Yeah.
So once you found your back to tree planting, was it something? So did you move out to BC in order to be a tree planter, or just like I wanted to come to BC and check it out here?
I wanted to come to BC, and I knew quite a few of I had a very large friend group in high school. A lot of us went to Western. Some of us didn't, but we're still friends. Like I'm still friends with people since high school, like a group of like 20 guys. It's very strange. And a lot of them came out here too. And so I came out, and then I hung out with them. I couch surfed a bit. I lived with them in Kitsilano and Vancouver, and so it wasn't just a loner just trying to meet new people. I actually had friends who were out here. Most of them went back eventually, but then I would go back up tree planting, and I liked the money. Like it was a good way of like in terms of unskilled manual labor. It's probably about as much money as you can make because it's not ridiculous amounts of money, but it's I'm not doing a trade, and
Yeah.
you can make a couple $100 a day, which was a lot of the time. So it was half decent money, but it was also a lot of fun, and I had a lot of girlfriends.
Yeah.
I met tree planting. I met my wife tree planting. I had my second longest term relationship was 3 years was for tree planting, and then I met my wife tree planting in BC. So it was always very fun and relationships and good times and hard work and good money. So I kept going back, and then I became a foreman, and then the bending over every 2 meters was over.
Oh, good.
So it's arguably just as hard work, but you're making more money and you're not production planting. So that was still kind of fun, but it was really still seasonal, and it was not like a career. It was not I'm not doing this forever.
Yeah, you knew that at one point there's got to be a 80-year-old Paul planting trees.
Well, I do remember my father. This always stuck in my head. I remember my father one time saying, "Paul, you need to get into head work." And I thought at the time that was so patronizing and bougie and just like like what you're saying, manual labor
Yeah,
is not
elitist maybe.
But of course he was right. Like I'm not built to lift stuff my whole life.
No, none of us are.
No. Well, yeah, you see the amount of drug use in construction workers
Yeah.
because there's the amount of pain these guys.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
Lifting your whole life or your hands are just, no, for sure.
Yeah. So and then I found a program in BC. The forestry industry was kind of collapsing as it has done a few
Often
times.
does, yeah, here in BC, for sure.
In the late 90s, and the NDP government at the time created a program called the Forest Workers Transition Program. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm a forest worker. I thought you think of loggers and stuff, but silviculture, it's called. It's part of the industry. So I qualified. And basically they gave you like some $400 a week tax-free, 1999. So $1,600 a month, tax-free money. And they'd pay for any school you went to, up to $10,000 in tuition. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some free money and go to school. And then they made you take aptitude testing. And after all the aptitude testing, they said the 2 jobs I was most suitable for was lawyer or investigative journalist.
Wow. Wouldn't you know it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So
Continue.
So the fact that I'm interested in those things, clearly there was an aptitude there too. So, I'm pathologically curious and I'm fascinated by process and what's going on and why.
So take me back to like you kind of read those to the aptitude test and goes, Paul, you're good for law or investigative journalism. Did you have a moment there and thought, you know what? I am. Like what was that like when you sort of had that? Take me back to the feeling, the moment, like because when you're tree planting, I don't think you're going, I got to get out of here and become an investigative journalist. That moment, so that
it's a good thing it didn't say tree planter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine. Just
stay
stick
here.
with it. You're good at nothing else.
Yeah, you're fine. We'll give you the free money, but you're planting trees, Paul. What was that like when it kind of had that epiphany and gave you those suggestions to say, hey, maybe you should try these? What was that feeling like?
I remember it quite clearly that my never-ending humility and maybe look back with a tiny bit of regret was that I didn't think I was smart enough for law school. I still want to write the LSAT. It drives me crazy because I bet you I would do good on the LSAT. But anyway,
You should try.
I know. I have a friend who's a judge. She keeps telling me you should try.
Just
I'm
try
like,
it out.
I'm 54 years old. I'm not going to become a lawyer. She's like, why not?
Who cares? Yeah, go for it. I mean, you're not. Yeah, you're fine. You're still walking. You came in here okay. You sat down. You're speaking. You're good, man. Heart's still beating.
I've met a lot of lawyers, and I mean,
but you have a different angle of it too, with the investigative and then the presenting. So
but
go ahead. Yeah.
But because I kind of put that aside almost right away, and immediately I was like, kind of like, well, duh, a journalist. What the heck? Why didn't I do this like a long time ago? So I looked into journalism school, and there wasn't. There was a few broadcast journalism programs in BC, but as your viewers will know, I've got a face for radio and a voice for print.
Okay. Well, this is an audio podcast first, video second, so you're good.
Well, I've got the voice for print too, so that's nice. I said that in my wedding speech, I remember too. But so I wanted to do print, and there really was. UBC has a master's program in journalism, but it's very academic and like they don't even produce a newspaper. They don't even it's just very academic journalism. Like I literally don't know any working journalists who did UBC journalism.
Would it be like research papers or
Well,
documents or what?
I don't even know. I don't
Okay.
even know what the program is. But regardless, Langara College is I think it's one of those college university. Everything's a university now.
Yeah.
They turned them all into universities.
Yeah, Langara. Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but Langara College had a program that was a 2-year diploma program for, straight out of high school or whatever people could do. Or they had a 1-year certificate program if you already had a university degree, or 3 years of university. And so I had a university degree, so I went into the 1-year journalism program, and it was a great program. Like we had some at the time known journalists, like Hal Wake taught broadcast, and he used to do the early edition in Vancouver, and Les Bazo taught photography, and he was a well-known province photographer, and we had good profs, and it was immersive. We had to produce a newspaper, like right away, first term, I don't know if it was every week, I forget, but the first term there was the diploma kids and all of us older certificate kids, and the first term we were reporters for the newspaper, and the second year diploma kids were the editors. We'd actually produce a newspaper, and then in our second term, we were the editors, and the first year diploma kids were the reporters. And so you would assign stories, and there'd be a sports page and an arts page and a page 1 news.
Brilliant.
And you'd come up with stories and you'd brainstorm. You'd have story meetings. It was exactly what journalism. I've worked for newspapers for 17 years, and in that journalism program, it was exactly what you do in newspapers. It was great training.
Wow.
You just dive in. You go. Shit, I don't have any stories. What should I do? And someone else might give you an idea, and you just brainstorm things, and then you come up with ideas for stories, and there's maybe something happening in the community that's newsworthy.
Yeah.
And, the newspaper is not distributed outside of the school, so it's not like getting wide readership, but it's great practice.
Yeah, but you're getting students reading it who are, they're involved. They want to know the news. They want to know what's happening. So when you're in that environment, you're probably thinking like, you must have had a feeling like, yeah, this is what I enjoy doing.
Oh yeah. I loved it. I really loved it. Yeah. And we were one of the last cohorts of people that did in photography. We were in the dark room.
Oh, okay. Yes. The dark room. That's a Google search for many people.
Yeah,
I'm
really.
sure.
I do remember being 2 darkroom stories. One of them was somewhat sexual, but I won't go into that one. The other one was
this is not
family.
It's a family for
okay.
Yes.
The other one was in a dark room. If you've ever done dark room work, you picture the light, the blue light or whatever it is, the red light. Well, before you do that, when you open a canister of film, it actually has to be black, and then you put the film out of the canister. You crack it open with a can opener or whatever, and put it out, roll it on. You have to be able to do this blind. Roll it onto the thing and close and seal this container, and then now you can turn on the red light. And I was in there. I remember in there with this girl Karen, and I cracked open the thing, and I did it because I memorized how to do it, got it on, and you're thinking kind of crazy. You're thinking to yourself, is there any reason there could be any liquid here? Why would there be liquid? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I can feel liquid here. I don't know. It's strange. We turn on the light, blood everywhere.
Oh no, Paul. Yeah, did you cut yourself on the opening up?
The stupid
oh my goodness.
plastic, the hard plastic edge
Okay.
from the film canister sliced my finger, and it was so clean that I didn't feel it.
Well, it must have hit an artery. It sounds like that. Well, that's okay. We'll put a disclaimer on this podcast before we.
Sex and blood in the dark room.
So when you basically, now that you've graduated that program, were you recruited to, what was your next step sort of after graduating? Because obviously you've got it, you've got the skills. Now it's like, I gotta make a living now.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like? Or how did your journey continue on from your schooling?
At that time, in the years leading up to that, again, the journalism industry has changed radically in the last 25 years. This was 25 years ago. At that time, there was sort of almost like a standard route people would take. Either they would go off to a small town and work in a small town paper, and then they would give up and do something else because it paid so shit.
Mm-hmm.
Or they would go to a small town paper and then work up to a bigger town paper and then maybe get to the Vancouver Sun or the Province or the Globe and Mail. That was sort of the route people would take. So I was like, okay, that's the route I'm going to take. And so I went to Grand Forks, BC.
Okay. Up north.
Nope. Couldn't be more south.
Is it? Okay. Well, wow. I haven't been living here that long.
In fact, you can throw a rock and hit the U.S. border, actually.
Oh, is it down the Kootenays?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was thinking, yeah. Anyways, Prince George, I was
No
thinking.
one's ever heard of Grand Forks. It's funny.
I hear it once in a while, but I apologize to people in Grand Forks who, if you're listening to this, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, and I will
shout out to Grand Forks.
And I will huge shout out to Grand Forks. Sorry, keep going there. So
anyway, Grand Forks, it's a little town on.
Good for you for being brave. Like here
Yeah, I know. Another one in hindsight where you're like, I'm just going to go to a town of 5,000 and just go, hey, here I am.
Brilliant.
What do I do? And
any fear, any apprehension? What was that feeling like? How old were you at that time?
I was actually older than a lot of people who'd finished journalism school. So I was probably 27.
Okay.
Might have been 28 even.
Yeah.
Yeah, 27. And I went there and my partner at the time, who was later my wife, did come with me. So I wasn't alone.
Okay.
Well, I started by myself. She finished University of Queens and then came and joined me.
Okay.
And we lived in Grand Forks and we loved it. It's such a beautiful little town. It's kind of got you're from Kamloops.
Yeah.
It's got a combination of that scrub hill mountain biking trails.
Amazing.
And then, but also you're in the forests and valleys and the Kettle River and we loved it. But she was becoming my salary was, by the way, the first year as a reporter.
No.
$19,000.
Okay. Wow.
I know.
Okay.
Pretty good, eh?
That's good money management for you then. Rent was affordable at the time, or how was it?
Yeah. Oh, I had an apartment the size of a house and it was $700 a month or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's
But
never again.
Yeah. So it paid really badly. And then she was going to become a naturopathic doctor. Too small of a community to set up a practice.
Oh, okay.
So we really liked it, and honestly would have almost stayed because it was very idyllic. But so after a year of that, which is very common, no reporter usually lasts more than a year.
What kind of stories were they dealing with at the time that you had to get out and do the beat?
Yeah, well, it's a weekly newspaper, like a lot of those small town papers, and you're covering city council. You go to the school board meeting. You pray for crime.
Yeah.
And I had one murder while I was there.
Wow. Okay. One. I mean, that's big for them.
Yeah, I always remember that murder too because I remember the cops. Like today, I laugh. It's so like hokey small town. I remember the cops saying to you, so because I covered it actually like the court case, and they said, yeah. So Paul, can you when you report on it, can you not report on the technique we use to catch them? Because it's kind of like our only thing. And that thing, everyone knows it now. Most people, it's called Mr. Big Scheme, which is where they think they know who killed somebody, and then they get an undercover cop to act like a drug boss or a gang boss, and slowly get him to admit that he did this thing. It's the Mr. Big Scheme. They still do it. The fact that people still fall for it is staggering. To me.
Yes. Yeah.
Like how stupid.
Especially with all the documentaries now and I mean, come on. Yeah.
But I like the naive first year reporter. I was like, okay, I won't tell anybody.
Yeah.
So, there was a crime. There's just, again, a lot of times small town reporting, there's not much to report on.
Yeah.
There's, look, there's a goose walking down the main street. Cool. Let's take a photo of that. Put that on page 1.
Yeah. Some people like some people get into it.
Well, yeah. And there's a little bit of arts going on, a little bit of sports team.
It's kind of like a community bulletin board
hockey.
Awareness, right? Like what's happening. Okay. So, I mean,
that's what community journalism is mostly in small town.
When you decided then, after it's time to move, how do you sort of look for, do you look in the paper for the paper jobs? Well, how does that work? Like when you're starting to, we're going to move on from this. And
it was pretty set what was going to happen because again, my partner went to the Canadian called naturopathic medicine in Toronto. So we were always going to go back to Toronto for 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So, you know, and that was easier because there was much more work there and I was from there. So that's what we did. We went to Toronto in 2002,
Okay.
2003.
So from BC back to Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spent 3 years lived in downtown Toronto. Yeah. And I worked as an assistant editor at a natural health magazine.
Okay.
That was actually only a part-time job, like a 60% time job. And then I tried to freelance. I wrote for anybody. I wrote a couple stories for Now magazine and Extra, which was the LGBT paper in town. They would pay. And I'm like, I'll write for anybody if you're going to pay me. And so I just tried to make a living freelancing. Not very easy, but luckily I had a job that was paying me 60% of my wages. So yeah, I just muddled through that, and then we always wanted to come back to BC.
Okay.
That was always the plan, and she was going to set up practice in some community that was big enough, and I was getting a job at a paper that was big enough, and the stars kind of aligned for.
Something popped up.
Well, what popped up was that my editor in Grand Forks, Michael Schwernard, was actually from Chilliwack, and after he left Grand Forks, he came back to his hometown and he worked as a reporter at the Chilliwack Times. And right around the time when we were going to move to BC somewhere,
Yeah.
he was going to leave the Chilliwack Times to go to another job. And he told the editor, just hire this guy. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, wow.
And the editor, Ken, was so lazy that he was like, okay, we'll just hire that guy.
Yeah.
Sight unseen, skills unseen. And it was a good enough, population was about 70,000 then. It was perfect. There was only one naturopathic doctor in town.
Yeah.
So it all worked out perfectly. She came, joined his clinic, and I got a job at the Chilliwack Times. And that was June of 2006.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago.
So when you're at the community paper here, well, that's a network, right? You've obviously made an impression at one spot, and then people know, and then that's lesson learned. Like,
it's a small world, like
Yeah.
a lot of worlds, probably filmmaking and documentary making, but yeah, journalists often know each other. I had a cohort of 20 people I went to journalism school with, so I would know them where they were scattered around.
and then
One
they
by
scatter.
one by one, they all left journalism.
Okay.
By the time I came to the Chilliwack Times, I think like 4 or 5 out of those 20 were doing journalism. The rest were doing PR,
Yeah.
communications.
Yeah. No, it's definitely you got to adapt. You have to pivot. So now that you're in Chilliwack, what sort of journalism or what sort of cases were coming to your doorstep?
Well, I was thrown in a good way. I was thrown into being almost like the main hard news reporter because I was replacing Mike, and there was a Robin was there, and she covered school board, and she covered the arts and some other newsy things, and then there was a guy Darren who was primarily a photojournalist, but that was right around the time when photojournalists stopped existing.
You had to take your own photos, I guess. Yeah.
So he was a very good photographer. So he continued to take most of the photos when possible. But he was also a sports reporter. So he was really just doing sports and photos. She was doing that. So I covered City Hall, and crime would just be whatever came in, whoever was available.
Yeah.
You're chasing ambulances and listening to the scanner and tracking down fires.
So when you were first here, was there a little more crime than Grand Forks? Were you feeling like, there's a little more stories here? What was that like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a little more stories, but you got a bigger paper to fill.
Okay.
And so no matter what, there's, you have a paper to fill, and you've got very soon after that, the websites became important. Back then, they weren't actually that important. You'd literally publish the newspaper, and then the day after the newspaper came out, all of it would just go right up online.
Okay.
Soon after that, it was like, you got to put stories up online all day long, every day. So yeah, there was lots more crime, but there was also just more happening at City Hall. You go every 2 weeks. There's a city council meeting and a big thick agenda. You'd pick up and you'd go through whatever. Some of it, in hindsight, is pretty boring stuff, but like rezoning stuff. But again, because I'm so curious, I find anything fascinating, like agricultural land reserve applications to remove land from the ALR. Like, I was fascinated by how that worked because, density, increased density in this neighborhood, and people are pissed off. The NIMBYs, So you can always find a story. You can find stories anywhere. I always tell people that everyone's got 3 or 4 incredible stories in them, whether they know it or not.
Yeah,
I promise you.
I agree.
3 or 4 things that have happened to you in your life or that exist about you that told in the right way could be a book. Everybody has.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree. Told in the right way.
Yeah. Whether it's you have diabetes and something, I don't know.
How you're dealing with that or tragedy
Anything.
or great times,
Or, yeah.
moments, high school.
Or you were a child model.
There you go. Attaboy. I'll say perfect. Nice, Paul. I love it. So now that you were at Chilliwack, I want to just I want to bring it back to sort of what you're doing today. Obviously, with the paper industry, and then you're working there for a while. But obviously, the paper major cuts in the paper. Any journalism. This is worldwide, by the way. This isn't just this one paper.
Yeah.
But as the economics, the technologies are increasing, you obviously were there for a while, but you had to then pivot and do something on your own. Do you want to take me through that a little bit? Just highlight a little bit sort of that transition. Then I want to bring it back to what you're doing today. And I'm a little more curious on how your process works. So go ahead.
Well, I'll just quickly tell you about the history of the newspapers in Chilliwack, because it's the same in every medium-sized city in Canada, probably. Basically, it was the Chilliwack Times, and there was 4 of us there. And across town was the Chilliwack Progress, and they had, I think, 4 reporters and the others. They had 5 people there, and we were, in competition, right? Because you're competing for stories, and more importantly, competing for advertisement, because a community newspaper, right? I always said they're the ad department, and we're the subtract department.
Oh, okay. Nice.
In terms of on the books, the payroll, that's true. So yeah, and we were owned by CanWest Global in 2006. And then 2008, I don't know how many people remember, but we had a little global financial crisis. Massive, everything changed. Pandemic level changes happened all over the world. It caused a lot of problems. And one thing that collapsed was CanWest Global. And they filed for receivership, and then they became, I don't remember the economic terms, but basically the creditors took over and created Post Media, which exists to this day. But that was who owned us, was Post Media. So actually I shared stories with the Vancouver Sun. I actually just did a Google search for some weird reason, and I found a couple stories I wrote in Chilliwack that are on the Vancouver Sun website, because we used to share stories. So we were on CanWest Global, and then in carried on like that for about 6 years. And then in 2012, not 6 years, less than 4 years. And then we were purchased by Glacier Media.
Okay.
And that's a major community newspaper company in BC.
So a lot of shuffles, a lot of transitions. Are you like scared for your job?
Yeah,
What
always.
the heck? Yeah.
At every turn, you're scared for your job, or you don't know what's going to happen next. And it's just all confusing. And then, when Glacier bought us, we thought, oh, they're going to do something strange. Who knows? But then 2 years after that, I think it was 2 years after that, Glacier and Black Press basically own every community newspaper in BC. And Glacier and Black Press basically like almost traded papers. I don't even know how this is legal, frankly, so basically like to the point where there was the Abbotsford News and the Abbotsford Times and the Langley Advance and the Langley something.
Like, so there's two competing papers per city, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what happened is they traded papers such that Black Press then, and this still exists to this day, owned every paper on, let's say, this side of the Port Mann.
Yeah.
Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, also Maple Ridge on the other side of the river.
Okay.
And then Glacier owns every paper in Metro Vancouver. And then Black Press owns every paper on the island.
Okay,
So
interesting.
we totally did a swap. So then we immediately thought, well, of course they're going to close us down, because now we're owned by Black Press. The Progress is owned by Black Press. Why would you have 2 papers in the same town? The Abbotsford Times closed, but that's only because they were unionized and they rose up.
Yeah.
The owners just said, well,
We'll just
F
close
you,
it. Yeah.
close you then. So, but they kept us, and we puttered along for 2 years, and owned by Black Press, with one publisher, going back between both offices.
Wow.
I guess they were still making money, so might as well not. But then in 2016, the end of 2016, they finally said that they didn't say they were closing the Chilliwack Times. They said we were merging Chilliwack Progress. I'm not sure how it was much of a merge because the word Times disappeared, the website disappeared, but no one lost their job. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Good. So that's good for now.
Yeah. So I went across town to the Chilliwack Progress. This is my competition for 10 and a half years. And I had to walk in the front door of the Chilliwack Progress.
But I mean, it's not like are you guys like fist fighting papers or like how
No,
competitive was it? Is it a competitive industry? Is that
It is. It was competitive, but it was more like passive aggressive.
okay? Like it's funny. Even sports, it's kind of like sounds like a sports rivalry.
Yeah. Yeah. You think about that, like the Canada US, they're like, oh, sports rivalry, but they're kind of friends in the end. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
fair.
they kinda, and it was more like, you'd be at an event and you're like, oh, there's Gianna taking a picture. Gianna, roll your eyes, or you
That's so funny.
I know. And it was particularly, but then it was
rumbling
particularly
with the local papers.
Oh my
Okay,
God,
fair.
yeah.
I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Totally. And so it was pretty humbling to like literally walk in the newsroom with my stuff, and there's Jenna and Eric and Jessica and Jennifer.
But it sounds like when you walked in, okay, hey everybody, we're all in the same game in the end, really, right?
Oh yeah, and it was all very positive, and of course
Yeah.
for them it's good news because if you consider it a battle, they won.
Yeah.
And they just picked up the dregs.
Yeah.
Me.
So they're probably in their mind, they're like, yeah, we got this.
we
Fair.
won, yeah.
I get it now. So when you were at the paper, I know there was some transitions there, and you were. Can you take me through sort of what year was this? That was 2016.
That was the end of 16. So I started January 2017 at the Progress.
Okay, so when COVID hit and whatnot, what was the industry like at that point?
Yeah.
Like when did the paper like really take a hit? What happened there?
Well, so we chugged along there with for a community the size of Chilliwack, 75, 80,000, whatever it was, to have a newsroom with 5 reporters is hilarious. Like that's just staggeringly large. No community that size would have 5 reporters, but we did, and we filled 2 papers a week, and they were big papers, so we were all busy. Not as busy as we were later, but so yeah, I carried on as a reporter, and I focused on the courts because I was better at it, and that's not some sort of skill set I have. It's just habit. Covering courts is very challenging, and it's a very opaque system. But I got used to doing it. I like doing it, so I covered the courts and a lot of the crime stuff.
So when you transitioned over, then it was courts more, or was it sort of like were you just transitioning from your courts and then what you're doing there transitioned to the new
Not
paper?
totally, no. Because
okay.
when I came to the Progress, and Jennifer Feinberg was City Hall reporter, so I'm like, well, okay, I guess I don't get to do that anymore.
Yeah, you're not doing that anymore. Yeah.
Jessica covered school board. School board I hated, so that was fine. Eric was a sports reporter, and so I've just covered. You cover just general news in general, but courts in particular were something that I focused on, and so I very quickly I'm a very prolific reporter. I actually even remember one time at a union meeting, this guy Phil from Maple Ridge paper said to me, Paul, you have to stop writing so much. You're making the rest of us look bad.
Oh.
I was like, really?
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm going to just keep, yeah. That's
so
just silly.
I chugged on, and I ended up getting, because crime is, if it bleeds, it leads is true. That's what people want to read. Whether it's good news or bad news, it's reality.
Yep.
And so I ended up becoming like I'd write the most stories, but also get by far the most page views. By then, the website was really important. So I was getting like page views. And then in 2019, the editor retired.
Okay.
Early 2019, he retired. And then he wasn't replaced. Month after month, he wasn't replaced. We just muddled through, us taking turns putting the paper together, doing his job.
Taking the skills you learned at Langara, applying them here.
Actually, yeah, paginating the paper with using Cork Express or whatever you use.
Okay.
But I, at a certain point, halfway through that year, I said to the publisher, I said, someone needs to be actually in charge, and it should be me. Which I don't know where I got that confidence.
Hey, do it.
And the publisher said, I agree. So basically, I gave myself more work, and I think I had a 10% raise or something.
Okay.
So I basically was kind of in charge unofficially. So I had come from like the competitive paper to join this newsroom of 4 people, and then suddenly I was kind of in charge.
Yeah.
It was funny. And then the pandemic hit, March 2020. We still hadn't hired a new editor. It was becoming very stressful even before the pandemic because it was like, we need an editor. They hired one for 6, she lasted 6 weeks and just was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then March 2020 happened, and the owners of the paper, the editorial director of Black Press in Surrey, called me up, and they wanted to lay somebody off because of the pandemic, and it was just staggering amount of pressure on newspapers, every business.
Yeah.
They put us to 60% hours, and they wanted to lay off Eric, the sports reporter. And the union said, well, no, it's all about seniority. And even though I'd been around for 15 years, everyone else there had been around for 16, 17, 18, 20 years. So they said, no, you have to lay Paul off.
Okay.
And then the editorial director called me, and I remember the Friday, I'll never forget it. He said, Paul, you've got to take the actual job as editor. You have to be the editor. And so I basically got bullied into a raise and a promotion. So I became, by Monday, the union was not happy, let me tell you, which was funny. So I became the editor, March 21st.
It was a pivot. It was a transition. You got to move. You got to sway.
Yeah.
It's all good.
And I carried on most of what I was doing as editor for I carried on reporting, covering the courts and things. There reached a point where I actually had to stop. In fact, the union filed a grievance. It was a full fight with the Labor Relations Board and a full fight between the union and Black Press. The union was complaining that I wrote too much. And Black Press was saying, we want editors to be allowed to write as much as they want.
Wow. Okay, that's a whole other podcast.
Oh my God.
You just open up a can of worms there. That's insane. Like just write. You can edit, right? You can edit down.
I know, but I was doing bargaining unit work.
Oh wow.
And so then the company lost that fight. And then I had to actually teach Eric how to cover the courts.
Okay.
So I did that. So I carried on. And then 2023, if we want to fast forward to then, June 2023, I was fired.
Yeah. As an editor of the paper.
Yeah, we don't need to get into why, but if you Google Paul Henderson,
yeah, you can
Chilliwack,
Google Paul. Yeah.
Paul Henderson Chilliwack, on the first page of Google, you'll see a Vancouver Sun story about me.
Okay, I'm going to look at that up.
The news covered me being fired. Rebel News covered it.
Well, I think it was at a time too.
CBC.
There was 2023. There was a lot of It's an interesting story. I suggest people definitely go have a look at it. But we're in an interesting time in 2023. There's a lot of corporations versus truth versus things it's
pandemic.
Just pandemic.
3 years into the pandemic, people were messed up.
Yeah, it was a weird time. I can't believe it wasn't that long ago either, like 3 years ago. But it still feels like another chapter.
Yep.
So when you're so now that which is fascinating because we fast forward to what you're doing today. You're if not writing more and doing more.
Yeah.
So. Is this a middle finger to the unions? Is that what I'm hearing? Because you've continued on after you've left. So maybe just take me through. Okay, so now you are. When did you start putting like the list of all the crimes that were happening in Chilliwack? Was that like a week after you left, or was like something must have happened where you?
I had a bit of dead time. Like I right away, it was very traumatic. Actually, no matter what, even 2 days later, no matter how much it was traumatic that I was fired with cause, and I actually sued Black Press.
Okay.
And I actually my lawyer even filed a human rights complaint.
Okay.
Because basically to do with freedom of religion. Again, Google it.
Yeah.
So I got a bit of money because I won that. Well, they settled with me.
Settled, yes.
I don't have a non-disclosure agreement, but I have a non-disparagement agreement. So Black Press is the greatest. I will say that. Move on. So I carried on. I had people who wanted me to keep doing what I was doing because I was the only one doing it. And it wasn't easy to teach someone. Eric actually did a really great job. Eric Welsh, I have to admit. Really smart guy, but really reserved and didn't want to do anything. I taught him how to cover courts, and he was really good right away. I was like, great. And then 3 months after I was fired, he quit.
Okay.
So then it was like, no one's doing it. So I was muddling through. I was actually quite depressed. Issues. My marriage was falling apart, and I wasn't sure what I should do. I got a job, an editorial job at a very weird publication. It was totally remote, and it was basically the if you get the Vancouver Sun, not the Vancouver Sun, but the Toronto Star, or several large daily newspapers across North America. There's a TV guide magazine in the middle. It's like TV listings.
They're not there anymore, though, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called. I think it's called literally TV listings, and there's news stories in there. Anyway, I was the editor of that for about a month, and then I got a job with the provincial government in September of 2023. So I was an editor in the communications department of government. So I was with 4 other people working remotely. I was editing all the press releases that go out from the government to into the media.
So your investigative journalism, though, when that was still
But I
kind
kept
of
what I did is
yeah.
I had people who wanted me to keep doing it, so I couldn't pathologically I couldn't stop. So I kept reporting on things that were happening. I'd find things out because no one else was doing it, and I would just share them on Facebook. Like I literally would share like
course.
I would almost do like journalism on Facebook. It was really funny. And then finally, I had a guy who was super keen for me to do this, and he was a genius. Well, very, very, very smart guy with web and how to build websites and do all these things. And so he set me up, and I launched my website. I didn't launch it like tell anyone, but in late 2024, I started building up the website and putting stories on there, and then sharing those links. Yeah, and then in January of 2025, so a little over a year ago now, I fully launched the website, something worth reading, and carried on. I think I filed 420 stories in 2025. So it's 1.5 a day or 2 a day.
What, Paul? So okay. So now you're in passion mode here, or obsessive compulsive mode.
Yeah,
you decide. So now that you are, I want to just bring us back to the present here really quick. So when you hear a story, can you take me to what's the next steps? Like, is it something like, oh, I heard there's a crime?
Mm-hmm.
What triggers you to then to go, okay, I need to call people, see people, go there. What is happening in your brain? What is your, I don't know, can you talk about your process a little bit on what it's like to be in your shoes, and this is following your passion as a investigative journalist?
It's an interesting question because it's something you don't really analyze. I was talking to a UFE class last night about this, and I was asked the same thing, and I was like I have this ability to listen to a conversation. Like I can go to a city council meeting. Early on you didn't have it. It becomes an instinct. Early on, I'd go to a city council meeting and I would literally take notes on everything, on every topic, everything they said. And I'd go away and go, I guess that's a story. But you develop an instinct for what is newsworthy. Why something is newsworthy. You kind of hear it and you go, oh yeah, I think we should tell people about that. Sometimes it fizzles out, it fades. With crime in courts, it's a little more obvious. The more serious the crime, the more obvious it is that it's newsworthy, or the more serious or the more well-known the accused is, even if it's minor crime, that's newsworthy. And it just becomes pretty easy. And then I go to court and I have an ear for quotes. When someone says something, like, boom, that you just nailed, you just wrapped this day up perfectly, thank you. So you hear what's newsworthy, and it really is an instinct. Like I think I'm good at lateral thinking, and I can put pieces of the puzzle together that connect this to this, and say like, oh, that's an interesting anecdote. Oh, it actually relates to this thing over here. This is a theme that's going on. This is a problem in society, whether it's domestic violence or mental health issues or whatever it is. And so I just developed an instinct for what's newsworthy. And then with the courts, again, it is almost in a way, it's very hard, but also in a way easy, because it's drama. It's just drama all in one place. You have a story. You have a good guy and you have a bad guy, and you have the Crown Counsel and defense, and then you have a judge who's making decisions, and it's life changing and shocking, and it's it's terrible things and it's tragic things, but this is the human experience, and it's some of its most worst situations, and it's compelling all the time, unless you're, sometimes when you're actually covering a trial, it's ridiculously boring. Like I was listening to a trial the other day where the forensics identification person was talking for, I think, 3 hours about the different types of blood splatter when somebody does a certain thing. If they're moving, or if they're moving up, or if they're moving over in the way, and he can tell which way blood's, and you're like, okay, that's enough on the blood splatter.
Wow. That's it is a fascinating topic, but 3 hours to,
It is, yeah, but the detail they get into. And so, my process is just I run on instinct. I wake up.
It's a developed instinct, though. It's something you've been doing. Yes. I mean, you were a young journalist as a kid, and so you're kind of, you had that back then. So it's kind of neat to find that connection where looking back, I don't think you can argue like, yeah, this is something that's just who I am now in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I always like to do, the thing with being on my own is that I can do whatever I want. I tried to do a lot of this when I was at the paper too, but I always try to do a different way to do a story. Like, if there is a specific thing that has happened, I want to find a different angle into it. Like, I'll give you an example from just this morning. Uh, Time date this a little bit, but this terrible school shooting in northern BC. It's just coming out this morning
Yeah.
what happened. It's all over every
It's
reporting.
horrific.
Yeah, and right away I'm looking at it. I'm not going to report on that because what am I going to do? I'm not going to Tumbler Ridge. No one needs to hear from me on that. Everyone's talking about it. But I already looked into it and I found this Boston Globe story from 3 years ago, and it linked to a data set, and it was just about who are school shooters. And it might seem obvious, but the gist of the story was talking about people blame mental health. So he's just crazy. He's a mental health issue. It's not. It's almost there's almost more mental health problems in the general community than there are school shooters who had diagnosed mental health problems. It's about anger, and it's about disappointment, and it's about revenge, and it's not necessarily a mental health problem. I'm only telling you that about school shooters because that's, to me, interesting.
Yeah, no, I understand.
that's
That's the angle into the story.
And
exactly.
I went and I found the data set that I think the writer of this Boston Globe article was involved in creating this data. And they've got all these graphs. I love a good graph, by the way. I don't know.
I get it.
I'm a nerd.
I get it.
I'm such a nerd.
When data is presented the right way, I'm in.
There's a pie chart.
Nice shading on that one. Yeah, no, I hear you. No, it makes sense because that's we always go to the one angle, but you as an investigative reporter, it's like, well, how else can we get into this story and go in? So no, that's very creative thinking as well.
And I will pursue that because I will report on what has been reported. But this website is I'm going to share some of these graphs, and they show the number, for instance, the number of school shootings every year, and what the rate, how many there are. And for instance, there were 230 in 2025, and that's way down.
This is North America, U.S. Okay.
There's none in Canada. Right?
Well, just one, I guess. Actually, yeah, for now.
So yeah, I remember actually starting to actually write something and thinking to myself how this is so horrific. All of the nation is freaking out. This is a horrible tragedy. It's kind of just another Tuesday in the U.S. And then this is what a nerd I am. I counted how many Tuesdays there were so far in the year. And there's been 6 Tuesdays so far in the year. And there's been 14 school shootings in the U.S. so far this year. So it isn't even just another Tuesday.
It's February. That's wild. So, Paul, we've been chatting for a little over an hour here. This is awesome. I mean, you could see a lot of different angles to take here, and that's why you have the podcast, something worth hearing, because these stories you can sort of dive deeper into and really look at the graphs. I think more than anything, that's not a bad. You can get some graphs in there. So my last question here is. You've made it this far in your life. You're obviously following a passion that sort of presented itself early on in your life, and now you are doing it. What would you say to other people who are maybe starting their careers off and want to continue with storytelling or journalism, and what would you say to those people and yourself, looking back?
Like a lot of industries, and probably almost everything, given the rise of technology since 2000, and then social media in, say, 2007, 8, and now AI, it is really impossible to predict what is going to happen in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And looking back, I couldn't have predicted what it would be like now. The one thing I'll say about journalism is that people always are going to need to find out what's happening around them. It's as simple as that. I want to know what's happening over there. I'm the guy, when you're driving down the highway and there's some idiot rubbernecker slowing down to look at something? That's me.
Okay.
So there's always going to need that. It's just the means at which the stories get out. And frankly, right now, more and more, this is it. Podcasts. That's how people. Whenever I tell somebody I'm going to do a podcast, it never occurred to me until you considered that I should, and I would tell everybody, and they're like so excited. They're like, "That's all I ever listen to is crime podcasts." I'm like, "Really? Okay." People eat that stuff up, and it's the way people get their news. And the other problem is that there's so much misinformation, disinformation, bad information, mistaken information, people who just spewing garbage. That having somebody who is, I'm a member of the Canadian Association of Journalists, and I'm, BC Supreme Court accredited journalist. They aren't fancy things. I just joined these things. But I'm someone I'd like to think you can trust. And I think that's going to be very important. And so somebody coming up and maybe doing journalism, you've got to be professional, even if you don't have a job, even if you're trying to make it on your own, even if you have to act like a professional, you have to be a professional and do the job the way you see it being done by professionals. Otherwise, you're not going to be taken seriously or last very long because everything's changing and people are gonna get sick and tired of AI and misinformation, and I'm going to be left standing there telling the truth.
Well said. Well said. No, it's also one last point to that. It's not because you're not paid for something doesn't mean you aren't, you aren't that. You don't do it, right? You don't have to. So, Paul, that was a lot of fun. That was a really good conversation.
It was fun for me too.
Yeah, it was good, and I'm glad I got to hear more. And we're going to hear more about your podcast as well. Something worth hearing. I'm excited for that. The more investigation, because there's no end in stories there. But thanks a lot for chatting with me, and thanks for listening, you guys. And we'll see you next time on the OverArch.